All right. I think we're live. uh, all right. Let's see. I can't hear myself though. Let me check my phone. Uh, oh yeah. Oh shoot! Look at that. I am live. How cool is that? All right. All right. Um. All right. So, can you guys leave me a comment and let me know if you can hear me? We're doing an art score right now, and I'd like to invite some people on if they'd like to participate. And also, this is kind of like the test run. I'm using some new software, so just want to make sure everything's functioning properly. And let's see here. Who would like to join me today? I'll bring you on into the Zoom if you have some time, and we're going to look at a Rockwell painting and score it, and I'll walk you through that process. If you'd like to join, just leave your name, make a comment, and then I'll send you the link, and you can jump on into the Zoom call and participate. All right, so that looks like that's working, so I don't need to do any of this. Okay, so let me close out of that. And okay, so let me share my screen. So it's going live. Okay. All right. So this is the painting we're going to look at today. And if you guys would like to join, participate, I'll send you the Zoom link and you can jump on in. And what we're going to do is go through 14 questions, and then everybody gets to rate their answer from 1 to 9. And then at the end, we tally it together and we have a score. And I'll wait maybe about 5 more minutes, see if anyone wants to join in. I can have as many people as I want, but it'd be kind of cool to have a nice conversation with 1 or 2 people, maybe 10 people, maybe 20 people, so if you guys want to jump in, just let me know and I'll send you a link. Actually, you know what I'll do is I'll put the link. Let me see here. For right now, I guess I could probably put the link in the if you have Zoom and you want to join in, I'll send you the, let me write on the screen here what the Zoom link is. Nope, that's not it. Let me go back here to Zoom, get the link, participants, invite, copy link, close this out. Okay. Let's blow this up. Okay. So here is the meeting ID. So if you already have Zoom, then just type in that ID, and the password for today is art, and okay, so let's change this to heavy. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and wait. I'll start in 4 minutes. If nobody jumps on in the next 4 minutes at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, then I'll just go ahead and do it myself, all by myself. But if you'd like to join in, you're welcome to put down your paintbrush and jump in. We're going to take a look at a Norman Rockwell painting. So this will be the painting that we look at. Let me move this up to the top here. And I can scoot this puppy up here. And then I'll scoot that puppy down there. Okay. So this will be the painting that we look at. So if you want to participate, password is art for today. The meeting ID on Zoom is 863-0923-1517. And if you'd like to join on in, waiting for you. All right, so I just updated the description. So if you want to join, just go ahead and click that link and you'll come into the Zoom meeting. We got 2 more minutes, and at 1 o'clock Central Time, if nobody joins, then I'll just go ahead and ArtScore the painting myself. And then if somebody wants to come in or a group of people want to come in, just click that link. The password is art, and then we can have a conversation about this Rockwell painting, and we'll go ahead and score it. Okay. So I'll just wait another minute or 2 here. All right. Let's see. Yep. There's noise there. Okay. It's 1 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and get started. That's right. I sing to myself. This is actually a pretty fun painting by the great Norman Rockwell. And I'd like to try, what I normally have done in the past with these ArtScore events is I would bring on a group of artists and collectors and, maybe about 6 to 12 in a group. And we would look at a painting and discuss the painting, and we would go through the art scoring system. What I'd like to do is to be able to get to the point where we can do these live. Right now, it's being broadcast on Twitter, on YouTube, Facebook, and I want to get this system set up so that we could have ultimately hundreds of people at one time art scoring a painting, and then we get to find what the score is all the way at the end, what the collective consciousness of that of the score, of the painting is, and so I'm going to go ahead and just get started here. Let me go ahead and lock the door so nobody can just jump in the middle of it. And how do I do that? So some of this meeting today is just kind of figuring some of these things out. Well, I don't like the fact that I can't figure that out right now, but I think we're just going to go ahead and risk it. Oh, let me go to participants. Maybe it's in there. More. There we are. Okay. So lock meeting. Meeting is locked. Nobody can join. Now it's just me all by myself. Okay. So there are 14 areas that we're looking at when we're scoring a work of art. And so I'm going to go ahead and use my little new polling system that I created here. And let's see if it works. Okay. So the first thing we want to look at when looking at a work of art, okay, let's turn this off and let's get to the artwork so we can see it properly. Okay. Is we want to ask, is there a subject? Is there a deliberate use of subject? And so we want to appreciate the work, appreciate the composition when there's a clear destination, interest, or focus. And that's for our eye. We need, as humans, we need something to go to. And if we're just wandering aimlessly, then the work of art isn't very good. Okay, we lower its quality. So we want to lower the score when the subject is ambiguous, unclear, or absent, when there is no subject. In this painting, there is a clear subject, okay? And the subject is the art critic, and he's looking, he's analyzing through his little magnifying glass at certain aspects of a painting, okay? So I'm going to say, I'll give it a 9. It is absolutely clear. Oops, let me launch my score here. Okay. And, because I'm the one doing it, I can't register it. Okay. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to write on a piece of paper 1 through 14. And I will tally up my score manually at the end. I guess I'd have to have somebody else on here to use my polling system. Okay, so I'm going to give it a 9 because it is a yes. And so yes is either 7, 8, or 9. And then it's either a high yes, low yes, or a middle yes. And in this case, being that he's an illustrator, there is a clear subject. It's absolutely clear. It's absolutely deliberate. And so yes, it is a 9. Okay. The next question that we have is there a story? Now, a story can be two things. It can either be a narrative or it could be a feeling that's been evoked. And so we want to ask the question when looking at a work of art, is there a deliberate use of story? Appreciate the composition when the arrangement of elements projects a feeling, okay, or sometimes evokes a feeling, or a narrative, okay, it can be one or the other. Lower the score when there's an unclear message or confusing meaning. And so in this image, there's clarity. We know how to relate to it. If it's not clear, or there's not a deliberate emotion, then we don't feel good. We don't feel proper. We don't feel right. And that puts us at dis-ease, and art shouldn't do that to us. And so we want to lower the art when it's ambiguous and unclear. We want to appreciate it, raise its value when it is clear. And so in this case, the story is very clear. It's an art critic. He goes to the museum. He's looking very, very closely at the woman's brooch, I guess they call it, necklace. Now, these paintings are alive. So the woman is like, ooh, somebody's paying attention to my northern regions. And so one thing I love about Rockwell, he had this great sense of humor. He had this nice little sense of sexual humor. There's a little innuendo in not a lot of his painting, but some of his paintings. And some of them are just very blatant. And I always like that about his humor. And then you have the three guys in the back, looking like, what? So that's kind of cool. So in terms of story, absolutely a number 9. Okay. And so we're going to rate that from 1 to 9. Next, medium. So the medium is the materials that he's using to actually execute his design, his composition, his work. Okay. So the medium, is there a deliberate use of medium? Appreciate the artwork when there is a clear confidence, control, and command over the medium. Lower the score when the work seems unfinished, amateurish, or rushed. Okay. It doesn't feel rushed. It feels complete. It feels very well ordered, not ordered, but pulled together with the use of paint. And so I personally will give him a 9. I can see where some artists might give him an 8 in this case. But I personally will give him a 9 because I think the artwork, the use of medium, the use of his oils is at a very high mastery. Yeah, mastery. Okay. Color. We want to look at the use of color. So color, is there a deliberate use of color? Appreciate the composition when the color palette is limited, mostly muted, and clean. Okay, so when you look at these colors, they're not dingy, but they are muted, okay? And they're not overly saturated, like bright, burning your eyeballs out, loud, screaming color. The use of that kind of approach in art with color, it's really nice in sales because you walk into a gallery and the thing is bold and it's just like, oh my gosh, it moves me. Yes, it does. Okay. But when you buy it and you take it home and you hang it up, the damn thing never shuts up and it just keeps screaming at you all the time. And to the point that every time you walk in, it's just like, oh, painting, just shut up. You're just too loud all the time. And so in a gallery, it seems cool and you want to take it home because it gave you this really great, impactful feeling. But then you realize the thing never turns off. And so that's why a master artist will control color and lower that intensity and use the intensity in strategic places. This requires not only, an intellectual approach, an analytical approach to crafting a painting through the use of color. Okay. And so I'm going to give him an 8. I think his use of color is nice. It is slightly limited in the fact that it's far more of a Brown school approach in a sense to his painting. He's really not pushing the boundaries of color, but he is using it very, very nicely. Okay, so I'll give him an 8 rather than a 9. Now, values. Well, let me come here to das painting. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to remove the color so we can just see the values. And this is a great way to look at the craftsmanship of a work of art is actually to get the color out of there, maybe even blur it just a little bit. You can do that primarily just by squinting. It blurs, it gets all the little details out. And when you squint your eyes, even though you may still see color, your eye isn't really registering color as much as it is value in design composition. And so when we squint our eyes and we look at this, we can see that there is an intelligent use of values. So what do I mean? If you look at his pants in the lower area, you can see that the floor is light in value. The wall is light in value underneath that little rail, and so he doesn't want the butt and the legs to pop out of the man so much, right? Because he wants your attention to be at certain in different places. For example, the highest point of contrast is the book that he has in his hand, which is a picture of this painting, which he probably read something, hey, look for this and da da da, and now he's using his magnifying glass to look at it. So what we're going to look at now is so that's a good use of values, because it's directing us to a very important part of the story. Now, if we come across, we can see that there's this little light tab against his dark jacket. So what does that tell us? That means he's researching. He's already done homework, and now he's going to the museum to see it in person, right? And then this comes up, and we see an interesting value shift in the magnifying glass, but we also see this nice dark part of her necklace on the light of her breast and in the dress. And so he's having these lights and these darks moving back and forth. And no matter where you look, the values don't blur into each other in a way that it disfigures the image or the objects and the elements in the image. So everything has its own integrity, but he's being very intelligent, very strategic about his values, where he's leading the eye, what information is coming to you when you do look at certain areas of the image. And so this is, again, very strategic, very well planned. And so I'm going to give him about an 8, because I think he could have played a little bit more with value, but it is a yes. But I'm going to say a middle yes. Okay. And you can score it anything you want. If you look at it and you're thinking the values they suck, that he didn't do very well, and you want to give him a 2, and that's a genuine reaction that you have, then that's fair. But I'm at an 8. Okay, so let's go back to style. So now here we are. Now the style of the work. We want to see if there's a deliberate use of style. Okay, so we want to appreciate the artwork when the artwork has an authentic voice or a one-of-a-kind way of doing things. Lower the art when the work is too similar to other works. What's interesting is, when I was growing up, I thought Norman Rockwell really had his own unique style, and he actually does. Okay, so he will be in the yes, but I'm not going to put him at a 9. If I look at a Rockwell painting, I can tell it's a Rockwell painting, but it's also very similar to a Leinenbecker painting. I think it's Leinenbecker. I think it's Leinenbecker painting, which Leinenbecker. He painted these paintings for the New York Post and things like that as well. New York Post, Sunday Evening Post. And but what was interesting about Leinenbecker and Rockwell is that their styles were very similar, except that Leinenbecker's figures seemed plastic, because he would always put these like really high sheens on them, like they were really greasy people or something. It was weird, but it was it kind of reminded me of like when 3D animation first started coming out, and it was like you could tell it was 3D animation because everything kind of had like this really weird shine, this really weird like light source on it, and then we started muting that down and toning that down, and things started looking more real. And so that's, to me, the difference between Leinenbecker style and Rockwell style. Rockwell doesn't come off as plastic looking, but their styles are very similar. And so I can't just say Rockwell has his own unique voice, because you can tell Leinenblecker was a huge influence on him. And so I would give him an 8 in terms of style. Now, when you look at a Rockwell, you can tell it's a Rockwell. But I'm not going to say that Rockwell put all this time into really developing his own unique voice. His voice, I think, comes a lot out in his humor and the subject and in the way he's his ideas, but his actual style of communicating visually, it's not fully original, but it's original enough to know that it's him. Okay. So let's look at the structure. Structure. Is there a deliberate use of structure? Appreciate the composition when the image is well ordered and aligned. Lower the composition when the elements are instinctively placed or disconnected. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? I did not do this earlier, so I guess I'm just going to go ahead and do it now. So what I'm looking for structures, I'm looking for things that feel connected. Okay. For example, when I look at this right here, the vertical nature of that magnifying glass, I want to know, oh, look at that. It goes through her nose, her eye. So that leads us right up through there. Okay. And it comes right up through there and through the center of the painting. Okay. And if you have like a business card and you're standing in a museum somewhere, you can go ahead and actually just use the edge of it, and you'll start to see things that are aligning. Okay. Notice that this is a very important vertical that's going through here. But if I follow it down, it doesn't really extend anywhere past here. There's no connection point for the rest of the painting. But if I come here and I come through this vertical, this goes all the way down through his palette, through his legs, okay, all the way down, actually all the way down to the bottom of the floor, where this line creates this point with the bottom of the edge of the painting. And so that becomes the dominant vertical. That becomes the strongest point, the strongest vertical in the image. And it's nice because it becomes like this little focal, where he's now leaning into the painting and he's kind of resting on this vertical here. And so this is this nice little lean in. It's kind of really nice. And then you have these elements coming through here, which are bringing us across. Obviously, they're bringing us also through the book. Okay, so to me, this is structure. This is composition and design, where you're starting to look at how the piece is connected. And if it's not connected, if it's just randomly placed, like, hey, I want to put a guy here and something on the wall here and this book over there, and it's just like putting a puzzle together, but you didn't really snap in all the pieces, then we want to lower that score. So obviously, he is a master designer, a master composer. He's going to have a very, very high rating on structure. I give him a 9 because I know his stuff is not random, but is extremely well thought through, and every mark in his images are purposeful. Okay, so let me turn that off. This is going pretty quick. All right, so let's go to movement. It's actually kind of interesting because I was just looking at some movement. Okay, so movement is there a deliberate use of movement or an arabesque or use of curves? Okay, appreciate the composition when there's a smart use of curves and a graceful flow of movement. Lower your score when the image seems rigid, static, or frozen. A lot of times what happens is when someone is using a photograph, quote unquote, as a reference, but it's really not a reference, they're just looking at it and copying it, they will paint what they see, and in doing it, not compose it and not And when they're not composing it, what they will often forget to add in is movement. And so you'll look at a painting and it's like, it's just frozen, right? It, it may be painted really well, but it's like your eye just looks at it. It doesn't move. There's no life in it. There's nothing that moves you through it. There's no energy in it. Okay. Now, if we look at the use of curves in this image, it's very interesting. We do have this curve here, okay, of the palette. We do have this kind of curve coming up through here and bringing us, bending us this direction, okay. We do have the curves that are in here, which are nice. But what's really fun is you can really see the curves in the guys, okay, which is kind of interesting. And how, look at all the curves that are being used in the men, okay, up through here, up through their faces. The sashes are being repeated. Look at those curves like this. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why? Look at, even in the hands are curved, right? There's a lot of curving going on in here. Look at it's just being repeated all the way through here, through the face, through here. It's beautiful. Now, why are they doing that? Because he wants to transmit to us through the use of curve that there's this gossiping, this whispering, this chitter chatter among the men, right? And so when you realize, like, everything else for the most part is very angular, and he has the use of some curves, but it's very, very small. But then over here, there's this one section where it's just a different change of charge, is what we call it, where the design is it's very different. And so when you're in that, you kind of feel, not only see them talking to each other, but you feel them whispering, like, what is he looking at? How dare him? I can't see it. It's on the side. I don't know what they're saying, um, oh, what it would be to be young again, that whatever they're talking about, it becomes kind of fun. So I'm going to say there's a good use of curve here. I like that he's using it to change the charge. And so I'll go with an 8. It could probably be a 9, but I'll be a little conservative today and I'll call it an 8. But I think it's a really brilliant use of curves on here. Okay. All righty. That's number 8. We got a few more to go. The shape. Okay. Is there a deliberate use of shape? Appreciate the composition when there's a smart distinction between large masses, such as the subject in the foreground, and lower the score when there's a lack of clarity between the large shapes. Okay. So one way that we can do this, since I'm in the Photoshop, is I can come up here to adjust, and what I do is I'll go to Posterize and I'll break it down to 2 shapes, black, white. Okay. And that will tell us a lot of things. If the image isn't really being thought through well, when you do that, you'll lose most of your image. But you can clearly see that the great Norman Rockwell put some nice shadows down underneath the palette. Look at the colors on the palette, right? The colors are dark in value on a light palette, which that light palette was on a dark background, which is the man's body. But notice it's not all the way, he didn't put dark pants on it. There's just a shadow there to give us enough definition. As we come down, the pants turn light. They blend into the background, and then we have his shoes. But there's enough information, enough use of shape that we see clearly, oh, okay, there's shoes, which are dark on a light background, light pants, dark shadow, light palette, and so on. We come up into this area of his body. We come across, we can clearly see the books still there. It's a light shape with a dark shape in the inside against a dark shape. Okay. We can tell that these are still men, who are wearing the fancy collars and that kind of stuff, right? Inside a painting, because we have a darker frame on a lighter background, again, darker frame. And then we have the lightness of the woman in her eyes, these little dark spots. And then we also can see the jewelry. So even at this level, when we bring it all the way down. We can still clearly see the man's face. We can still make it out who he is, what he's doing, what he's looking at, the men in the back. We still get all of this incredible information. And this is what we would call a noten, just a design that's based on black and white. And this is very important because when you walk into, let's say, a museum or a gallery or your home and you want to enjoy the artwork, if it's not designed at this fundamental level, just based on two color, black, white. Now, when I teach it, I also do a 50% gray just to give us a little bit more control. This is what gives the painting its what we call carrying power, the ability to see and recognize and understand and connect with it from across the room. Okay. And so this is an extremely important stage in the composition process when composing and crafting a brilliant, successful work of art. And so if you're looking to buy a painting and you squint your eyes really hard and you have the ability to kind of look just for those shape relationships, those large shape relationships, and it's a mess. You know, he has black pants on a black background. He disappears. You can't tell what it is. We lower the score. Okay. Clearly, I'm going to give this a high. I'm going to give this a 9 at this level. He did a brilliant job on it. Now we want to look at the edges. Okay. So the edges are the edges. So what we're really looking at here is, let me read the description here. Okay, so we want to see if there's a clear and deliberate use of edges. Appreciate the composition when the edges between negative and positive shapes are groomed. Okay, lower the score when the edges seem unattended. Okay, so what does that mean? That means, let me zoom in here real quick to show you what it means. Boom, boom. Okay, so here we have, let's say, his pants. Okay, and if we look at the edge of those pants, it begins to feel almost like a puzzle piece that, which would be the positive shape of the pants, that lock in to the negative shape, the outside of him, okay? And it feels like that negative shape and the positive shape line up perfectly. There's no gaps, there's no weird, as your eye goes around these edges, they're not jagged, you're not getting caught up in like little spaces. There's a care to not just drawing the shape or the main object or subject, but also the relationship between the negative space, the space on the other side of that line. And there's a beautiful fusion that happens. When you start to pay attention to that kind of detail in a painting, you'll notice that the painter is just very well trained, because they're caring and they're becoming far more sensitive to not just the stuff that you see, but also the stuff you don't see, but you feel. And so this is what gives a painting a refined feel to it. It becomes not just a work of art, but it becomes fine art. It becomes much more refined. And so we want to pay attention to those things. For example, look at the shape of that back wall, right? Where the guy's arm is, you know, it's just boom, 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 whoop, boom, right? It's almost like, I love it. It's like a little thing of music, right? Just visual music, whoop, boom. And there's just this beautiful little care that's going on in there. You know, you kind of makes me wonder what he was listening to while he was painting. Okay. And so if you just follow, look at the edge of these, of the frame, right? Your eye beautifully just kind of like moves through here. It doesn't have too many jagged edges popping out, you know, things kind of flow. There's a nice little flow. And even though like the decorations on this frame, but then he comes back with the shadow to kind of help curve and smooth out those edges so that there's a grace as your eye moves through it. And it's very, very nice. Very, very nice. I love the floral frame on here, and the other frame with the dudes in it. is much more straight lines in there. Very interesting. Very cool. So I'm gonna probably give him somewhere about, I don't know if I want to give him an 8 or a 7. I'll stay with an 8. I'll give him an 8. Okay. So yes, he did care for the edges. Now, when I'm thinking of someone like a Gustav Klimt, thinking of his edges, which is at a whole different level, and so therefore that's why I'm looking at Rockwell and saying he's an 8. Now, you might say it's a 9, you might say it's a 7, you might say it's 5. That's up to you. Okay. All right. So we got 4 more to go. Soul. Now, when I say the soul of a painting, I actually changed this word a while back to energy, but then I was like, you know what? For those people who have a hard time with the word soul, that's your problem, not mine. The rest of us, rational human beings, can enjoy the word soul. We're not afraid of it. And so I decided, screw it. I'm going to put it back in because it's the appropriate word for when looking at a painting. And if you need to go and say, oh, it's the energy of a painting, go ahead and do that, okay? But let me explain what I mean by soul. Is there a deliberate use of soul? Appreciate the composition when the inward significance is observable, okay? Lower the score when the outward appearance of things is paramount, okay? So what does that mean? What that means is, I think it was Socrates who said it, or Aristotle, that the purpose of art isn't merely to copy the appearance of what it is that you're drawing, but it is to observe the inward significance of the object or the idea. And so is Rockwell spending a lot of time focusing on the inward aspect of it? I think he is conceptually. If I'm looking at the design, for example, the use of this curvy, very curvy frame to help us feel the curviness, the voluptuousness of this woman. I like that she's in a smaller frame, but you have these big curves, and so you feel like, you know, she's a bigger woman. She's tight in her clothes, you know. She's constricted in there. She has a lot of yumminess inside of all that, right? You can say. And so he's making us feel that. You look at the guys over there, they're big painting, they're hanging out, there's a lot more space, you know, they're like, tap, 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 right? And he's using curves to kind of really get us to feel the conversation that's going on. But the frame is much more angular. There's a lot more lines in it. And so when we look at the men, it feels more masculine. When we look at the woman, it feels tighter. It feels more voluptuous. And I think that's quite brilliant. Okay. When we look at the setting of the museum, he's using the lines in the walls, the light palette, all those things to help communicate that there's order, there's cleanliness, there's clarity to the place that he's in. And so is there a lot of soul in this? I'm going to say kind of, okay? Because I do think Rockwell, outside of his humor and what he's doing at a lower level, he's leaning towards adding some soul and some humor and some life into it. Let's just say life, but you know, energy, if you will, into it. But he also is focusing more on capturing the details of what's going on in that space. And so I'm probably around a 7, maybe a 6 or a 7 in terms of soul. He's I'll go with a 7. I'll go with this. I think if I'm going to be truthful in my gut, I'm going to go with a 6. Okay. I think it's there. He's going in that direction. He's touching on it. He's having a little playfulness with it, but it's not. I'll go with a 7. I think I'll go with a 7. Okay. So that becomes a very interesting thing to look for in a painting. And when you see a painting with a lot of soul, with a lot of energy, where people are not really focusing on the details, but they're focusing on the feeling, the energy that's coming off, that's vibrating off the painting, it does take it to a whole nother level. Okay. So the pattern. Is there a deliberate use of pattern? Appreciate the composition when a repetition, rhythm, or pulse is evident. Lower the score when the arrangement of elements are unrelated, irregular, or arbitrary. Okay. Now, is there a pattern? Well, one could say, well, yes, there's a pattern in the floor, but that's just because there was a checkered floor there. Okay. Could we say, well, there's a pattern in the lines going across? One could say that. I mean, what that does is evokes a sense of order, right? In a way, he's just kind of copying the architecture that's there because the architect put order to this place. One could say, well, there's patterns in the floral motif coming down through here, through the frames, right? Okay. There's a pattern, there's a motif here, and then it's repeated here. So there is a sense of pattern being used. Okay. Now, let us look at what we looked at before, which were the curves. Because in there, we're going to find a sense of pattern being used that he had to invent. Okay, so we do have the pattern of this nautilus shape here. Notice that it is a dark space on a wide open area. Very similar to what's going on here. Okay, boom. So that could be a pattern. Okay, we see the painting shape of the palette with the thumb hole in there. We see that very similar shape here with the necklace there. Okay. We also see a very similar kind of shape up through here too. Okay. Now it doesn't really lead us to anything, but in this shape, it is repeated and over and over and over and over and over. And even back here, and over again. Okay. This, you can see this angle is being repeated up through here, up through the hands here. Okay. This is wrapping around, coming through here. So there is, at least in that back section, the invention of of repeating repetitious energy. Okay. And so I'm going to give Rockwell, again, I'm struggling with this one between a 6 and a 7 because of the background, and there's a strategic purpose to it. I'm going to go with a 7 on repetition. Okay. Again, you could say there's repetition in the walls and on the floor, but to me, he's just putting in the architecture there, which the architect created the repetition, not Rockwell. Okay. So I'm going to give him a 7 on that. All right. We got 2 more. You guys ready? Let's go. Harmony. So when I'm talking about harmony, let me get rid of my, okay. So harmony, is there a deliberate and clear use of harmony? Appreciate the composition when your eye passes around the perimeter with ease. Lower the score when your eye gets strained, distracted, or stuck when moving through the artwork. So let me explain what I mean. I'm going to show you how I want you to look at a work of art, but this does not mean that the artist is making us move this way. This is what I'm just asking you to choose to move through the painting, okay? So I'm going to say always start at the top right-hand corner because that's how we're taught to read. Did I say top right-hand corner? I guess top left-hand corner. Yeah. Okay. Left-hand corner. Yeah. Top left-hand corner to the bottom right. Okay. Why am I getting confused on that? Okay. So what we want to do is we want to come straight down. Okay. When we get to about this area of the composition, we want to move towards on an angle. Then we want to move across about here and then here. Okay. From here, we then move up on an angle to about the center, and we enter the core of the painting. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to be able to navigate around the image and then come into the image and be able to do that with ease. So let's look at the strategies and the tactics that Rockwell is using to enable us to do that. Okay, as we come down here along this edge, our eye goes, wee. There's nothing here that's stopping us from moving down, okay? And so we come through here. Now this, if you're not careful, you could go too dark on those lines and then our eye gets stopped. Now, our eye knows to continue, and so therefore the brain has to actually use more calories to push through, fatiguing us at some level. And so it pushes us through here. But because he's lowered the values in that area so much, our eye, it doesn't take much effort at all for us to just breeze through that little area. We come down, same here, breeze through. Look how dark the line is here. As it gets to the edge, it fades out, vignettes out, passages out, and boom, our eye just has this beautiful little transition. It flows so nicely. Look at where these could have been harsh gutters. He's reduced the value, and our eye just moves through here, quite simple. And then boom, we come up on this angle and we move up. Now this does get a little too dark. He could have probably gone a little lighter in the value here just to allow our mind to go up here. Now, one reason he may have not is to bring us back into the pants and back to the image. Okay, so as our eye sees what's going on in this area, boom, it leads us back and back in. Okay, so we do have to push just a little bit to get through here, and then once we get through here, we do have to push a little bit in to get into the image of the painting back here. Now, why would he do that? Again, if it makes sense, if there's a logical reason for it, then we want to appreciate the work. If there isn't a logical reason, then we don't. We want to lower the score, lower our score. Now, I think there's a logical reason. Notice how on the left-hand side of the painting, the value is light of this edge of the floor where it meets the wall. Over here, it's very dark, right? So that tells me that there's a reason for that. And then we come here and this gets darker and gets heavier. And then this gets darker and heavier. And then this becomes an issue. So for us to go from this bottom right-hand corner up straight up, it becomes difficult. He's putting all these little speed roadblocks, not roadblocks, speed bumps, when you're driving, boom, boom, so you got to slow down. And when you slow down, it redirects us and it keeps redirecting us over towards the man. So all of these lines are telling us, do not go into this top space, right? It's purposely saying, do not come into this painting this direction. And so it keeps moving us over this direction until we hit this dominant vertical, okay? From there, we start the story over, or we do enter in to the image, but we have to enter in this direction. Why? Because as we come in through all these curves, we see the guy's face, we hear them, we feel them talking, blah, 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 and then we come back out. If we don't do it that direction and we come up through here, then we see all this stuff, then their face, and it doesn't make us understand what's happening because we're going reverse, okay? So strategically, he's then adding in these elements to stop us. And so to me, that's good harmony because it's forcing us to move. Now, sometimes we'll have this, and that's not a good thing. In this case, it's a good thing. But as I look around the image, I'm looking at this shape here behind his butt, up underneath here, the elements in here. There's really not, outside of maybe like this little tiny spot right there, that is a a little harsh. I think he could have gone a little darker in that little spot. It is catching my eye a little bit, but not too much, you know. Here, your eye does get caught up in here, but then because of the light values of the scarf and the skin, you do flow back out of it very easily. Okay. And so I'm looking for any areas that, you know, look at this beautiful shape that's being created here. Your eye just moves into here. It flows. You're not getting stuck anywhere. And so I'm probably going to rate this somewhere probably about an 8. Okay. Bam. All right. And then you can go ahead and score it yourself. Now we're going to go and do the last question of the 14 qualities in the ArtScore system. And that is the signature. Now, if you notice the signature, he has it up on this line. It's down here at the bottom right. It's low value. So we see it, we can read it, but it's not competing with the image. It's very, very low on the totem pole, okay? The artwork stands for its, can stand on its own without the signature, and therefore he doesn't need to overly promote that this was me, this was me. The art itself promotes the power of it, and then he can have it nice and delicate and elegant. Okay, so in this case, he lowers the value. He uses a very similar color, similar color. Okay, and if you notice the spacing along the edges are very nice. Now, I do feel that the space between the bottom of the signature and this line could have had a little bit more space. And so therefore I won't give him a 9, I'll give him an 8 on it. But I think it's a very creative use of his signature. I like that it's on an angle. I like that it's low value. And so the question that we want to ask when looking at a signature is it a clear and deliberate use of signature? Appreciate the composition when the signature visually harmonizes with the image. In this case, it does. Lower your score when the signature is intrusive or a distraction or competes for attention. It's not intrusive. It does not compete for attention against the whole subject or the whole painting, and it's not a distraction. I do feel that there's a little bit of space, that the space between the bottom of the signature and the top of, in this line creates a little bit of a tension that when I'm looking at the signature it has. And so if you just raise the signature up just a little bit, it would breathe in there and it would have been a better place. Sorry, Norman, but I got to call it as I sees it. Okay. Now on that, we give that puppy, I'm going to give him an 8 on that. So now what we want to do is we want to add up all of these scores. Okay. Let me grab my calculator and let me see here. I will sing you a ditty while I add this up. Okay. Okay. So we have a 9. We have a 9. 9, 8. 8, 8, 9, 8, 9, 8, 7, 7, 8, 8. So we come to 115 points, okay? Then I want to divide that by 126, which gives me a 0.9126, blah, blah, blah. Rounded off, it is a 91% or 91 for the art score. So this painting comes out to a art score of 91. Now that's for me. Well, the reason why I like to do these in large groups is because then that score probably will be a little less. It could be a little higher, depending, you know, on the score of the individual scores. And then we find out what a collective what the collective consciousness is in terms of valuing this image. And so, Norm, beautiful image, great story, love it. Great sense of humor, and it gets a 91 for the art score. And with that, I always tell a collector, if they're going to look at buying something, don't buy anything that's under an 85%. And if you're an artist and you want to be able to use a system like this to help sell your artwork, my whole point in creating the system is so that it helps the collector know what the quality of what they're buying. It helps the artist have a metric or a rubric to actually produce higher quality work. And the person who just wants to love artwork has the ability to, one, have a conversation about the artwork and hold the artist accountable to higher standards. I am personally, and I know a lot of people are, just very tired of very low standards in the art world. Just because you can make a mark on a paper doesn't call it a work of art. And I want to empower the people to be able to have the tool to say, hey, I appreciate your effort, but respect us. If you want our money to buy your painting, respect us, Mr. Artist, and elevate the work that you're producing. And this becomes a great rubric as you're going through the process to create a higher standard, a higher end work of art. And so yeah, so that's that. I'll see you guys next time.